One of the things that seems to come up in Laloux's book is this idea of a more evolving state of consciousness and more conversation around it in non-traditional or environments like Wall Street, which leads itself to this concept of inner work. How do you see inner work, Nadia, in the role of new work and evolving organizational forms?
Well, one of the statements in Bettina's book that I really loved was, if we begin to decrease external structures, so if we're taking away something that gave people a sense of security in terms of bureaucracy, let's say Stefano and I are in a team, we're having a conflict in a hierarchical organization, I can just delegate that upwards, right? I can go to you and say, Golby, you figure it out. Like he's an idiot. I can't work with this man, right?
And that happens.
That happens. Yeah. I mean, not between us. We're actually, very close. But now, in a system where we have less external structure, we actually need to increase people's internal capacity to have more structure, to hold more tension, to be more self-regulating. Because that suddenly means we may not have that boss anymore, so him and I need to have a way to self-regulate and also regulate between the two of us in order to find a solution for the tension that we've created in this relationship. So in a sense, I would say, I would have really loved to steal her book title because it's so ingenious. New work really does need inner work. Yeah. So when we look at the 4 quadrants here, it is really about understanding what is my side of the 4 quadrants, the individual side. So to have great self-awareness about what are the behaviors that I have, how do I show up for others, how is my self-assessment maybe also different from how other people experience me, which can be shocking at times. And then with a lot of self-compassion to understand there's a story behind that. So I didn't become like that because I'm an evil person or I'm stupid. There were survival mechanisms in my past that led me to this path. And it doesn't mean that I have to travel on this path forevermore. Yeah? So that is the part of inner work that I feel is actually really necessary. And to some degree, I would even say, is the foundation for something as radical as equity. Because at least my experiences, and I'd love to know what your experience has been working with clients, I'm excited about models like equity or even more fluid forms of self-organization. However, in client system, I often experience a lot of fear around that. So there are always some people who go, yeah, we've been waiting for this for a long time. That's about 20%. Then you have, a whole big middle bit where they sort of sit on the fence and go, well, I don't know, interesting, but, we'll see. And then you have 20% who are actively sabotaging you every step. Now, if that happens, again, not bad people, but they're acting out of fear. So how do you create the soil for that level of organization to sort of emerge naturally rather than pushing that down their throat? That, for me, is the inner work piece.
It's a great question. What do you think? What have you seen with your clients? What are the traditional obstacles or resistance?
Well, I think you touched on a very good point. Well, first of all, we did a very interesting research a couple of years ago when we started to work on the book, and it seems like the level of readiness of people, generally speaking, towards this kind of models is higher than what one might think. So, for example, one of the results, also for the US, by the way, was that about 25% of the people that took part of this survey, this study, were actually pointing to the notion that in the future organizational models to be successful should be based on a network of self-organizing teams. So 25% might not be 80% or 90% or 100%, but it's a pretty high percentage of people that had that vision. And together with that, there were other interesting elements that came out. But I totally resonate with you. So I think it's important to understand what is the level of readiness of people. It definitely is not for all. What I understand about organizations that try to implement these models is that it takes time, even when there are the preconditions, and probably between 20 and 30% of the people eventually will leave the organization. So I think that has to be factoring the plan.
And I think in the end, it all comes back to what Nadia already put out around, like, okay, so how am I creating my sense of safety in my working place? And I mean, I come from Germany, and I can tell you, we Germans, we do that with rules and structures. So when somebody comes and tells me, we're going to take that away from you, there is at least one part in me, and even today I have that, where I get panicky. And so, first of all, it's like Stefano and Nadia said about the readiness, but it's not only about the readiness of the teams, it's also about the readiness of management. Because I often get companies coming to me like, yeah, Bettina, you know, we want to do new work. And what becomes very clear after 10 minutes is I'm sitting in front of a management which never really wanted to lead. And then self-organization is the perfect tool to get out of this tension I'm always sitting in with a team like, yeah, we're not really led, and yeah, of course, now I'm delegating that to you. Yeah. So, but for me, like one of the principles we also described in the book is self-organization is not a delegation process anymore. It's a permanent power transfer where we really share a responsibility in a team. So I can only, and maybe the Constellation class will subscribe that because that's one of the systemic principles, I can only transfer power which I really took in the first place. So if I'm a manager who never really took the position of leading my people, there's nothing I can transfer. So in that case, you first start with management because there's nothing to self-organize in the first place. Of course, there is also the other way around. I often have people coming to me like, I read the Laloux book, it's so super hip and fascinating, and you can feel they really want to have that for their company, but because it's a hip thing. And what you can feel underneath that is they're not willing to give up control. And this is one of the worst like ambivalent situations appearing from that is that you have a boss who gives you freedom and then corrects every decision which is not in his or her opinion. And this is really how you destroy teams, because this is how you destroy trust. So it's like not only the readiness of the team, it's also really the readiness of management. And I think this like reflection of managers and CEOs to really see, okay, so what's my relationship to how I create my sense of safety in a company, by leading or not leading, by really fully taking power, by control. And how do I relate to the idea, because that's the basic principle behind self-organization, that I really believe that decisions should be made where the competency is. And that a role-based hierarchy doesn't allow us anymore the flexibility which answers the question coming from the complexity we are trying to navigate. Because in the end, we need to navigate complexity now. There's no way to control it anymore.